In last week's parsha, Yosef was sold down to Egypt. Through a series of events beyond his control, he found himself in the royal prison. Even as a slave, Yosef was entrusted by the warden with responsibilities to help manage the prison. Among the inmates during his time there were two prominent officials, the chief butler and the chief baker, each of whom had troubling dreams. Yosef interpreted their dreams, and his interpretations came true. In this week's parsha, Mikeitz, it is Paro himself who is disturbed by dreams. None of his advisors can provide a satisfying explanation. At that moment, the chief butler suddenly recalls his time in prison and mentions the Hebrew slave who had interpreted his dream. Yosef is summoned, listens to Paro's dreams, and offers an interpretation that resonates deeply. Paro is so impressed that he elevates Yosef to the position of second in command. This raises a question. Yosef was a foreign slave, imprisoned in Egypt. What motivated Paro to appoint him to such a high office? The commentators explain that Paro was struck not only by Yosef's words, but by the wisdom and practical advice he offered. Paro recognized greatness in Yosef and understood that the massive project of saving Egypt required someone uniquely capable. Yosef was that person. Still, this was no simple decision. Yosef was a prisoner, not even Egyptian. For Paro to elevate him above all his officials, he needed their support. Paro therefore emphasized Yosef's brilliance to convince his advisors that Yosef was the right choice. Yet it is also possible to see Paro's decision as politically shrewd rather than purely altruistic. Yosef may have hoped only for release, perhaps even a chance to return home. Becoming viceroy was beyond imagination. But Paro faced a dilemma. Yosef's interpretation of 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine sounded convincing. But what if it was wrong? If Egypt prepared unnecessarily, the people might rebel. Paro therefore made a calculated move. By appointing Yosef, the very man who proposed the plan, to oversee it, Paro protected himself. If no famine came, Yosef could be blamed and discredited. But if the famine did occur, Paro would be celebrated as the leader who foresaw disaster and saved the nation. From any perspective, Yosef's rise seems extraordinary, even absurd. Yet Yosef himself later recognizes that this was not mere coincidence. He was not just the right person in the right place at the right time, it was part of God's plan. His personal journey was woven into a greater purpose. Shabbat Shalom.